Hi, friends. So, I don't know if you got the notification. We only put it out about half an hour ago about doing just a little live stream, just to say hello, hang out for a little while, and it's Dee Dee River and myself, Trisha Roberts. So, feel free to just to say hello. Whoops, just hang out for a little while. Just checking the sound levels right now. You may want to speak, Dee Dee, and see where we are with the sound levels. Dee Dee? No, you need to speak. Just speak and.
I think we're fine.
Okay, I like to check it on the TV
Okay.
though.
Let me talk. Here we go.
Okay, so that sounds all right. Okay then. So anyway, Dee Dee's just playing No Man's Sky again, and that's always nice to look at. And feel free to come in and say hello, and feel free to just raise whatever topic you might have found in the videos I've done in recent times, or in just tonight's video about evictions, or just hang out and we
of the stuff about the war and
we just tend to talk about whatever, don't we, Dee Dee, when we do these live streams, which are usually not this frequent, but we just thought we only did one a few days ago, but we thought we'd do
sometimes
just another
it's
one.
Nice
Oh,
to
here's
chat
Ginny.
publicly.
Hi, Ginny. How are you?
Hi, Ginny. Hi. Lovely to see you.
Yes, good to see you.
Yeah.
And it's always I was just saying to Dee Dee, it was nice to reach the 1500 mark tonight. Hopefully it'll stay there and continue on. It was going back and forth, and as I mentioned in another live stream, just before the election, the U.S. general election, I got about I don't know, I was getting about 10 people a day was subscribing, and now it's gone to a screeching halt again now that the election is finished. So I think the YouTube algorithms loosened up for people during the pre-election thing, and then they've clamped down again. So I suppose I got a few more subscribers, and now it's going to be a bit crawly, but that's the way it goes. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Jan. Jan says congratulations on the 1500.
Yeah.
So anyway,
hi, Jan.
I guess that'll be something that hopefully, if people start maybe sharing some of the videos, that might help. And at some point, I'm going to see if we can. Dee Dee's going to help me see if we can have a stable connection to do some pre-recorded interviews. I used to do live interviews with various journalists, like I've interviewed Max Blumenthal and Dan Cohen and some other people. Margaret Kimberley.
That was a really good interview.
Yeah, there was different ones. You can see them in the list, in the playlists.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, then being in Tasmania, and the national broadband network are very difficult when it comes to improving the connectivity, and there were too many subscribers on it, too many users of our what do you call it?
Our tower. Basically, we live rurally, and so we can't get connected with a cable. And so we get connected wirelessly. And that means we're limited to a reasonably slow connection when it's working well.
Yeah.
And when they start adding people and adding people and adding people to the tower without upgrading it, then what happens is you end up with a really, really slow connection.
Yeah.
And our connection ended up being so bad that we couldn't really do interviews, or Trish couldn't do interviews.
Yeah, so it's sort of
it was her, not me.
For about a year and a half, I haven't really been able to do any live interviews, or really any interviews, basically, because the connection's been so bad.
And it was a shame, because they were really bloody good interviews. Anybody should actually look back at those interviews. They were really very good.
Dee Dee's my biggest fan. Anyway, but anyhow, so maybe we might I might be lucky, and I might be able to do an occasional pre-recorded interview. I'm not going to try doing it live because I don't trust the stability of the connection here. But maybe I might be able to do the occasional one. So we're looking into that, and that would be nice. So anyway, so how's everybody been? Let's hear from someone else. We've got some good weather going here at the moment. It's been really windy. And I've got a little black cat on my lap who I'm scritching her neck, and she's got her head right back, and she loves having her throat scritched. Yeah, it would be nice. Hey, Ginny, I'd like to do the occasional interview. That would be nice. So what's happening with this? Where are we up with the No Man's...
Okay, well, I'm at a ruin where it's got a little bit of a memory thing, and it talks about the origins of the gek species and what's happened with them.
Right.
And that's one of the 3 main species in No Man's Sky.
Oh, okay.
And so I've just come here to have a look. I've been looking at the various plants, and classifying them, and the animals. Look at this little guy flying through the air. He's wonderful.
Where's that? There. Up in the air there.
Yeah, up
right,
in the air.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can focus on him a little bit better.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's really nice.
Like a little
he's
kite.
He's almost like a little, Chinese dragon.
Yeah.
He's one of the species here. Here's another little guy.
That's sweet.
They're very cute. I might offer some food, make up some food and offer it to them so that we can get a closer look at some of these guys.
By the way, how are the audio levels? Is my audio and Dee Dee's audio similar in volume? Excuse me.
How can we not have
If somebody wouldn't mind, just because we can kick somebody's audio level up if it's not.
Oh.
How have you been, Jan? Audio is good. Okay, so it's...
Okay, that's excellent.
Okay, so we're both pretty equal because I
and
don't want
we're
to be...
trying to work out why we can't get replay.
Yeah, we can't get any live stream replay.
Live stream, and I've talked to the Facebook chat people, and they say put in a notification, but I don't know. It's
the YouTube chat people, you mean?
They're mostly pretty useless about actually helping you out.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a little guy. I've just given him some food. He's kind of pretty happy, I think. Here's another little guy. Oh, he's a baby one. And some of the other guys are, I think, coming around to say hi.
How's little Nee going, Jan? Your little cat Nee.
I might get some carbon and make some more.
Oh, excuse me.
Hi, little boy. I have a little cat wandering around my desk.
Aoife loves... you probably, if you live with cats, you probably... Oh, wow, I just realized Alia doesn't have her collar on. I wonder what happened to her collar.
I thought you took it off.
No, she doesn't have any collar on.
Oh, no.
So little Aoife, he keeps running across the front of Dee Dee's monitor, and just because.
He comes up and rubs his face against mine sometimes, and he's very friendly. But then I've got 2 cat beds on my desk.
Oh, hi, Mangru Chen. How are you? I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Didi Mangru Chen is saying hi from China. That's lovely. What part of China are you from, Mangru Chen?
Lovely to see you here.
Yeah, lovely to see you here. I think you're the first person that I know of that's joined from China that's joined the live stream. So that's lovely.
Yeah.
What time? What time would it be in your part of China right now?
Probably not too different from ours.
No, that's true. Hey.
I think we're on Hong Kong, Singapore time. Except they're probably not on daylight savings.
Oh, you're actually in Australia, but I'm from, is that Xi'an? The middle part of China. Oh, okay. Great. Are you studying here, or are you living here permanent? I mean, you don't have to answer any of these questions, really. I'm not meaning to be nosy, but it's always...
We're just curious.
It's just curious, yeah. So that's Xi'an is the capital of the Shanxi province, a sub-provincial city on the Guangdong Plain in northwest China. One of the oldest cities in China, the oldest prefecture capital, and one of the four great ancient capitals, having held the position under several of the most. And it cuts out. Anyway, that's nice. I'm just having a look online to see what Xi'an is like, and
yeah,
and it's very nice. Let's see.
Well, it seems very nice to us.
Oh, it seems very nice to us. Yeah, I can see all those little, the many little sort of, what were they? The terracotta army, those little tiny statues.
I think they're not little tiny. I think they're actually like 6 foot tall.
Oh, really?
Or 5 foot, life size.
Oh, wow. 7,000 terracotta statues of Qian Bing Manyong Boangyan warriors and soldiers dating from 210 BCE, discovered in 1974. Well, anyway, that's nice. Let's see.
I think they had horses and everything else. It was considered a major archaeological find.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Look at this beautiful... let me just... I'll put a link to that and people can have a look. Hold on a sec.
Can you actually switch it? I guess not.
Manguru Chen says, I like your video. You sound smart. I wish.
Yeah.
That's very kind. Thank you. Let's see. After studying here, I'm currently working in finance. Oh, okay. I'm actually in Australia, but I'm... All right, sorry. After studying here, I'm currently working in finance. Anyway, check out these photos. Anybody else who's watching of Xi'an and really beautiful.
Yeah.
Some of the architecture is just fantastic.
Yes. Yes.
This is an amazing picture here of some... It looks like a little... What would you call that, Dee Dee? Let me have a... I'll post this in the chat section.
Well, it's high mountains and canyons and so on. Trish is busy looking at pictures of Xi'an.
Oh no, but I'm looking at this one. Look, see, watch on the TV, Dee Dee. Look.
What?
On the TV.
I see.
See that little... What is that on
well, I think that's just an observation sort of place.
But isn't that crazy?
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a place to have a look at how beautiful the area is, I think.
Yeah.
It's a little shelter at the top of the mountain.
Yeah. Yeah. A really long time ago, it was about 1979, something like that. Excuse me. I went to Hong Kong, and then I went across to the mainland, and I only got to see just for a very short period of time. It probably took me more time to get in than it actually did than I was actually in there, and it was just a really simple kind of a village. And then you see how China, like in the last it'd be like 40 years now, how incredibly amazing, the growth and the sort of the cities and everything. It's just incredible.
Yeah.
Hey, Dee Dee. I don't
yes,
know.
and a lot of them are very beautiful.
Yeah, really. Yeah, so, anyhow, I hope, Manguru Chen, I hope that people I hope you're not getting much blowback from the anti-Chinese, anti-Asian,
Propaganda and
the
nonsense.
anti-Chinese propaganda that's going out because the US has instructed our politicians and mainstream media.
Basically, the U.S. just can't stand that China
Yeah.
is out competing them in every way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And
got to stop that.
part of it is the fault of capitalism.
Yeah,
I mean, they decided to try and take advantage of, low worker pay in China, and so they moved all their the corporations just moved all their bases to China.
Yeah.
In the hope of exploiting workers.
Yeah.
And and instead, China's used that to modernize and
yeah, capitalism's fine with the US as long as they're the one that's exploiting everybody and dominating.
Ultimately, it's
not about
goal
competition.
Is exploitation.
Yeah.
And in some senses, that runs counter to the corporate thing, where they don't really care where they make their money.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Anywhere's just fine.
They have no loyalty to any particular country.
No.
Yeah.
They like the U.S. because the U.S. will try and force investment on other countries.
You know where I'd like to go, actually? I'd like to go to... if I could afford it, which I can't, I'd love to go to Japan and check out Japan, but it's just so sort of expensive. I don't think I could,
I'd love to go to China sometime.
Yeah.
Fabulous.
No, that'd be good. But really, I have this sort of interest in Japan. Just, I don't know why. I've always had an interest in that in particular. And where else? And of course I want to go to Scotland because of my ancestry. Anyhow, so where are we now, Dee Dee, in this?
Okay, well, I've just found this very large monument, which is some remnant of prior civilizations. And I might bring my spaceship here and save it.
Excuse me.
I love this function where you can ask the spaceship to come in remotely. Here it comes down. Oh, I've got to get in and get out.
Yeah, it'd be pretty groovy if you could, travel around on a spaceship. If things got too crazy here, you could just kind of take off. Hey?
Yeah.
And I mean, if you could travel at a really fast speed, I mean, there's literally billions of planets in the universe that one could probably do okay on. I don't know what the atmosphere is like, but I mean, there's billions of planets that could have life on them.
Yeah. Let's see. Don't I have any? Yeah.
Dee Dee got this other game. What's it called again? New Horizon
Zero Dawn.
Horizon Zero Dawn. But that requires a lot more attention. So.
And also, it involves more killing, and I'm not.
Yeah.
It's not killing animals happily, but it's
killing people. Yeah.
It kills.
Which isn't great either.
What?
Killing people, which isn't great either.
Oh, it doesn't kill people either. I think it kills machines.
Oh, okay.
And
excuse me. Well, I
but
suppose
the machines look like animals.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, they look kind of like dinosaurs.
Oh no, not dinosaurs.
Some of them look like horses. Trish is extremely fond of dinosaurs. She loves them.
Of course, if I ever met a dinosaur in real life, it'd scare the bejesus out of me. Well, the predatory ones probably.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being chased down by
a dinosaur?
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that would be...
I can't really imagine that.
No.
That would be difficult.
But wouldn't it be unbelievable to actually see a dinosaur in real life in the flesh? I mean, that'd be really quite amazing, wouldn't it?
I think it would be scary as hell.
It would be. It'd be scary as hell.
It depends how big a dinosaur. Not all dinosaurs were really huge.
Didi, you'd hope that their eyesight and their sense of smell wasn't so great, because you'd hope that their eyesight and sense of smell wouldn't be so great, because you'd really want to be able to hide or something.
Yes. Yes.
What was is that, that terracotta army?
Yeah.
Was that some sort of like a protection army for somebody who died?
It was a tomb of an emperor, as I understand. I may be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it was a tomb of an emperor, and they had his army there in terracotta.
Right.
Oh. No, you naughty little thing. I love my little spaceship.
I wonder if they have any vegan restaurants in Jan. Probably there's a lot of accidentally vegan stuff there, hey? Didi.
Yeah. What?
There's probably a lot of accidentally vegan stuff in Jan, that city.
Yes, probably.
Anyhow, anybody who anybody's lurking, feel free to come in and say hi.
Come in and say hi, or
excuse me,
Jen, or anybody.
Jan's already here.
I know, but she hasn't said anything for a while.
I'm gonna have to get up soon, and I've got this little cat on my lap, and I don't want to disturb her.
Always been amazed, or it's been a little bit concerning to me. I've been watching one of the left YouTube channels, and the people who are running it seem pretty together.
Ouch.
But they sort of, it indicates in the way that they talk about masks that they think masks are going to protect you from COVID. And do you mind if I talk about this?
No, as long as you make it clear we're not that you.
The what?
As long as you make it clear that masks are important. Yeah.
Masks are absolutely essential, but they are primarily to protect other people. The idea of using masks, basically is that COVID is transmitted through the droplets COVID is a real thing. It's transmitted through the droplets in your breath, and the mask catches those so they don't end up on everything. Because the real danger in many senses is touching things and then transferring it to your mouth or nose or some other part of your body, some other way that it can infect you. And so wearing a mask stops those things from going out into the environment. As far as coming in, well, they'll protect you a bit, but if there's a lot of people close to you. But what you really need to watch out for is touching things, and that's why washing your hands is so essential.
Yeah.
And it's easy for little particles that might contain, little droplets that might contain COVID, to get on your clothing or other things. And like when COVID first started, we had a regime that if we went out, we would wear gloves when we went, anywhere. And we would, of course, wear a mask to help everybody else. And then, after we've come back, we would, after anywhere you go, immediately afterwards you wash your hands. If you've touched anything, you make sure you don't touch your face with your hands. When you come back, you have a shower, take off your clothing, either wash it or put it away for 3 days, because COVID will only survive on clothing and so on for 3 days. And that actually is what you would do to prevent COVID, to prevent infection. But people need to be saying that. People need to be saying it's not enough to wear a mask. You need to wash your hands. You need to not be touching things. Or if you're going to touch things, you need to make sure you're not transmitting it back to your clothing or your mask or anything else. Isn't that right, Trish? Trish has been a nurse and
a
registered nurse.
Yeah, anyway, the US is in a state with 267,000 people dead now, and people are still going on about that freedom, not wearing masks is freedom and all this nonsense. And I don't know how this is going to end. I mean, it's just out of control, and people still are pushing against this ridiculous mask thing. It's anyway. I've talked about this in just the video I did a few hours ago that you can check out, and how there's a eviction apocalypse coming soon. In the there's in many states, 41% of people who are renting or paying mortgages are on the verge of eviction in the next couple of months. I mean, what is the government doing about that? What is Biden going to do about that? I don't know. Anyhow, I don't
know if any of them are worried.
No.
Which is pretty frightening.
Yeah. I mean, you should check out the map that I talk about in the beginning of that video. Have a look at the map. It's insane how bad it's going to be in the next couple of months if they don't do a fiscal stimulus, a deficit spending for the public to prevent these evictions.
Yeah.
I don't know, and they, this should be the first thing that they're addressing, and it just doesn't, there's no urgency at all.
No.
There's no use in telling people, I mean, it's important, of course. Biden is talking about, people doing their best to prevent COVID and wearing a mask and all of this. But, you've got to be able to give them some hope of not being kicked out of their home, because there's no point if people are going to be kicked out and then they're staying at their friend's place and they're all in these confined quarters with other people, and that's going to spread COVID. And these evictions have actually, they're going to actually end up sending it through the roof. So anyway, I don't know.
Well, yes, and that people are going to be cold. They're going to be having a difficult time cooking, for example.
Excuse me, I'm just going to make a cup of tea for us. I've got a pop-off little one.
You're really dependent on food you can pick up, and that's not good.
Say that
again. When you are homeless, you're really dependent on food that you can get, that you can either eat uncooked or that is cooked by someone else, and well, that's not good. It really interferes with people's ability to eat properly and have a good diet. Oh no. Okay, I'm about to go out and look at a salvage module, and I've brought in my other spaceship because my spaceship had a problem. Its launch thrusters weren't charged, and I'm probably going to have to go back and make sure that they get charged up. I have to see if I can find my little spaceship. Is that it? No. And yeah, so we're not anywhere particularly. We're just moving around. Oh, Trish is making a drink for us. She's gone away from the mic for just a few minutes. A beverage, not an alcoholic drink. I had half a glass of wine because I like that, but but Trish didn't. Because she's a good girl. I'm a boozer. I'm not really a boozer. I just occasionally like to have a little bit, especially if I'm going to be chatting for any length of time. The what? What makes you want to drink? Oh, yes. She said the itchiness from the hay fever makes her want to drink. And yes, it's difficult. Okay. Now, I'll just make sure I do have a launch thruster recharger. Okay, now in this game, there's occasionally salvage modules that come down and get buried, and you can dig them out. Anyway, yes, the hay fever can be quite bad here. A lot of people love spring, but find it's very difficult to deal with all of the pollen and the hay and all of the rest of that. We live in a rural area, and happily we live in an area where there's not a lot of animal industry, but there is a little bit. It's mostly a fruit growing area, which is gorgeous, really. Oh. Yes, cherry season is soon, and we are. I'm looking forward to it. I love cherries. I'm a big fan. Thank you, sweetie. Trish just gave me a nice smoothie. And we tend to eat things like that quite often. Yes.
Sorry, I'd had my thing turned off. Yes, my eyes and skin. because of animal agriculture around here, the hay, they're all sort of hay baling and stuff like that, and
yeah, and the grass grows like crazy. Tell them about the grass growing.
The grass, yeah, the grass grows at about an inch a day, and that's no exaggeration. So you have to sort of whippersnip, every probably 3 days. So it's kind of, this is during summer, spring and summer, and then by December it sort of slows down. Then, doesn't it?
Yeah, our land is kind of
Good boy.
fairly uneven, and so we use a whippersnipper, not a lawnmower.
Yeah.
Plus, we've got a lot of plants that we planted, and you've got to get around them.
I'm just going to turn my microphone off for about a minute so I can have my smoothie.
So she can crunch. She wants to crunch away for a few minutes. She puts nuts in. She loves almonds and walnuts. And I probably will take off. Whoop. There we go. Oh. And this is my little starship. Flying along with some kind of a building up ahead. No, there's a storm happening. Every so often on this planet, or this moon, there's toxic storms. Oh, I think it might be a ways away. And this is how this ship lands. It puts its little wings up. What happened?
Excuse me.
I'm going to look in all these little boxes.
What's happening, Dee Dee?
I'm going around and looking in the little containers to pick up oxygen and condensed carbon and other kind of materials that I might need. All of these little containers have stuff in them. Now where's my ship? There it is. And now I'm getting back in my ship.
Oh, by the way, Chris Hedges did a good video, I have to watch it again because I didn't catch everything in it, but a good video on fascism in America. It's in American DNA, basically. That's what it was saying, and how the Nazis basically used that American model of fascism for the
Ku Klux Klan.
Yeah. Or let me see if I can find it, because I think this is important for us to kind of know about, the United States, so that
we don't get pulled in by the propaganda.
Yeah, but just sort
a little
of realizing
bit of history doesn't hurt.
Yeah, and just sort of realizing that this was happening long before.
This isn't a new phenomenon.
Yeah, it's not a new phenomenon. And
it's interesting. They talk about in that particular thing about the Palmer raids, which is something that I've always been interested in. I've
talk a bit about that, Didi. The Palmer. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the Palmer raids were.
And when did they happen?
Okay, they happened in around 1911 or 12, I think. Maybe a little bit later. It was Attorney General Mitchell Palmer, which is why they called it the Palmer raids.
Yeah.
And up to that point, the labor movement in the United States was extremely strong. It really started with women in the textile factories on the East Coast. But workers got together and formed all industry unions. Now, this is before, of course, the Russian Revolution. I'm talking about the 1870s and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And people may not realize that, but like Karl Marx actually had an editorial thing where he wrote for the New York Times. And so
he what? Say that again. Karl Marx what?
Karl Marx actually wrote things in the New York Times, I think it was.
Right.
And there was, the labor movement was very strong. Initially in the 1870s and so on.
Yeah.
That was the time of like really rapacious capitalism. And workers were treated horribly. This is around the time they were really pushing for like the 10-hour day and then the 8-hour day.
Yeah.
And you had the Haymarket riots, which was a police riot in Chicago.
Yeah.
Where, kind of like the Chicago 8, they rounded up all the main labor leaders and decided to try and have them sentenced to death. There was a Judge Gray who asked the bailiff to find me a jury who'll have these people hung.
Yeah.
So that was going to be a fair trial, obviously.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
He tended to prosecute from the bench as the judge, and that's not what's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
The labor leaders that he was bringing in, most of them were not there. And the riot, I think, started when the police started firing, and they then panicked and all started firing, and most of the people who were killed, the police who were killed by their own fire.
Yeah.
Anyway, there was some very interesting things that happened around that time.
So it was a big suppression of the left, basically.
But there was also a really strong left movement.
Yeah.
There were marches in like Kansas City and places like that.
Yeah.
Of thousands, tens of thousands of people.
Yeah.
And it looked quite possibly like the United States would have the first socialist revolution.
Yeah, can't have that.
One of the interesting things about that was that the unions were all industry unions, and they worked with, for instance, the farmers. There was a thing called Grange socialism, which was the farmers trying to get together to resist the pressure of the banks.
Yeah.
And the demands of these all-industry unions that also worked against racism, interestingly. And again, this is in the 1860s, 1870s.
Yeah.
Was that they wanted all of the infrastructure, public infrastructure, to be owned by the public. And that meant communications, transportation, and banking.
Yeah.
They thought all of those things, and of course things like water, that went without question. In fact, water was public utility at that time.
Yeah.
But they wanted communications, transportation, and banking to be public utilities.
Yeah.
That was one of their demands. And that was undermined by the trade unions. Sam Gompers started dealing with a different kind of unionism to benefit particular unions, particular trades.
Yeah.
And he was famous for his talks and fabulous lunches with the bosses to try and improve certain unions. And his claim was that there was a time for political activity and a time for political activity and a time for trade union activity, and the two were mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
So he wanted the union movement not to be involved in any social issues, just to try and improve the wages and conditions for their workers. And that was the start of the AFL-CIO. What am I looking at?
I thought your what's the name was going to explode. External toxicity, environmental warning.
Oh, that's all right. I'm inside my spaceship.
Okay. Okay.
I don't need to worry while I'm in my spaceship.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, it's probably very boring to look at, but you can see the little animals wandering around. Anyway, and then there was the Great Train Strike, where workers and so on went out. They basically tried to disable, because trains were the major transportation of freight and people.
Yeah.
And the Great Train Strike really crippled, basically, food and so on came in to the workers. The farmers had arranged that the food could come into the workers, but not to the general population. So they were really working on a revolutionary, in a revolutionary framework.
Yeah.
And this is when federal power really came in. The U.S. government sent in, first they sent in the state militias.
Yeah.
And after World War I, after the Civil War in the United States, the Civil War was fought mainly with state militias.
Yeah.
You had, the various state armies. And they also allowed for a federal army, and that was when they had the federal draft and the New York draft riots and so on.
Is this still related to the Palmer raids?
To what?
Is this still related to the Palmer raids?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's all a bit of a build-up. Basically, the Great Train Strike, the Great Rail Strike, happened in, I think it was 77 or 74, something like that. And the militias, state militias, went out, and they decided to side with the workers. And most of the small communities were siding with the workers. Because capitalism was just exploitative of everyone, really.
Yeah.
and the federal troops were sent in to fight the state troops.
Yeah.
Because the state militias were on the side of the workers, so they sent in federal troops. And that was where they started. That was one of the reasons they kind of ended state troops and state militias.
Yeah.
It was to break that kind of power and to keep federal control so that they could break workers' power. There was the Pullman strikes, which was where Gene Debs really came in and became famous. Debs. Gene Debs was, of course, the socialist candidate for president.
Yeah.
He ended up being thrown in prison for opposing World War I.
Yeah.
He said World War I was really an argument of empire between relatives, which it is, which it was.
Yeah.
And so they threw him into prison. And he still got a huge number of write-in votes as, prisoner number da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Gene Debs is famous in labor terms.
Yeah.
But then in World War I really stopped because of the Russian Revolution.
Yeah.
It wasn't alone. They were also having revolutions in Bavaria. In Bremen, the socialists took over the navy. And the capitalists and empire freaked out. All of a sudden they saw, in the middle of this war, workers revolting and taking control.
Yeah.
They took control of Russia, they took control of Bavaria, and so on. And they said, we need to stop this war now.
Yeah.
And deal with communism, basically, and socialism.
Yeah.
And that was, like where they really identified this. I mean, it had been seen as a huge problem for capitalism.
Yeah.
And after that, Mitchell Palmer basically started the Palmer raids, and that was the start of the idea of un-American activity and un-American thought.
Yeah.
And it was declared that all these socialists were un-American, and they actually rounded up a number of them and sent them off to Russia.
Yeah.
Yeah. They had things where they would round people up and take them to prison. And if anybody came and asked whether they had been rounded up and taken away, they were arrested on the idea that if you thought that somebody that you knew or a relative was arrested for socialism, then you were probably a socialist. Jesus. And that's all the evidence they needed.
Yeah.
And if you came and your relative hadn't been arrested or your friend hadn't been arrested, they would arrest you for coming in and asking, and then they would go and get that person.
It's like the Inquisition, isn't it?
And it was, the Palmer raids were outrageous.
Yeah. The rot goes way back, it's no wonder the US is in the mess it's in.
Yeah.
Because the rot was happening way, way back.
Yeah. It's been happening for a long time.
And the anti-socialist, red baiting, anti-communist stuff has been in process for a long, long, long time. And now they're freaking out. The state is freaking out because young people are once again interested in it, because they've allowed the public to just rot, basically. Instead of feeding them crumbs every so often to keep the public happy.
Yeah.
They've forgotten to throw the crumbs even.
Yeah.
And now they're freaking out because people are starting to,
Well, yes, I mean, Trump and the Trumpistas did identify a real issue with NAFTA and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And these multilateral trade deals.
Yeah.
Which are really a result of the globalization of the economy during the Reagan-Thatcher thing. But really, in doing that, they opened the gates. They ended sort of national economies, so corporations didn't have to be national corporations anymore.
Yeah.
They could set up their headquarters in the Bahamas or wherever.
Be everywhere and not be beholden to any
and
particular
they could
country.
take their manufacturer anywhere. And so the best place to take them was where the environmental standards and the worker standards were the least, where they could exploit nature and people to the highest degree, because that was where their most profit was. And so all of the manufacturing moved off to Mexico, to the Malaquidores, and which were huge industrial estates where workers were actually living in the midst of toxic waste. It was really very horrible. You know, things like Zenith television and that kind of stuff. And of course that meant that there was, you know, all the factories just left the United States, leaving the workers there buggered. And that was good for corporations and really bad for people. And people weren't gaining the benefit. I mean, the reason people were so well off before that was they were gaining the benefit of empire. They were gaining the benefit of the exploitation, the colonial exploitation and neo-colonial exploitation of all these other nations. But basically, then they got shafted. They weren't going to get, they didn't have the jobs, so it didn't help them that America was colonialist. The stuff anyway.
Yeah, really, which is where we are now.
Yeah, and of course it's gotten worse and worse. You know, the Thatcherite, Reaganite stuff was basically about dismantling all of the social
safety nets,
social infrastructure. If you look at it from a socialist standpoint, one of the more interesting things was the rise of neo-Fordism. And Fordism was... Do you mind if I...
No, not at all. I was laughing because... oh, never mind. Go on.
Oh, yeah?
Go on. No.
Okay.
Because
well, Fordism is the idea that manufacturing became a mass thing. You had the technologies. In a Marxist sense, the means of production are the technologies of production and the social relations of production. And when you change the technologies of production, then you might end up changing the social relations of production. And the technologies of production at that time shifted to, they started having, electricity came into the United States in 1888. Petroleum really was developed around that same time. So all of a sudden you've got both petroleum and electricity. And the machines became much more efficient. And you had these mass machines, but the machines were very inflexible. They could turn out a fender or something like that for a car or a car block or whatever, or a can or any of those things. But the machines were expensive and they had to produce hundreds of them. Oh my goodness, look at that.
What?
You'll see the way the spaceship is shaking?
Yeah, really.
You'll see in a minute. There we go.
Oh my.
It's a very big creature coming by.
Is that why?
Yes.
Oh wow.
He's shaking the earth as he's walking by.
Yeah.
Anyway, the technologies of production needed big factories, and they needed to produce a lot of goods to pay for the equipment and to justify the equipment. Yeah?
Yeah.
So you had mass production, and for mass production to work, you had to have a mass market.
Yeah.
And Ford's revolution was he decided to pay his workers enough
Yeah.
that they could afford to buy a car.
Right, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And that was the idea of Fordism.
Yeah.
And the benefit of Fordism for the capitalist class was that you've got a market. You know, you don't not just funneling.
Yeah.
And this worked in well with the trade union movement, which was undermining this mass industrial socialist movement.
Yeah.
And you all of a sudden the interests of trade unions and the capitalists were aligned, and that's where you started to see the successes of socialism, of the 8-hour day, of the idea of higher wages and salaries, and it's also where a lot of things like public libraries and that kind of thing started to come in.
Yeah.
Because it was in the interest of the capitalist class to change the social relations of production.
Yes.
And it became important that, you know, you had families who were reproducing the workers, that the workers were educated to a certain degree.
Yeah.
And that kind of thing. So you had more education. It was important that the workers were healthy. You wanted people who were going to consume. And of course, at that time, the major industrial countries were empires.
Yeah.
And they were exploiting the raw materials of everywhere else. And part of the deal of empire was to basically rip off the resources of colonies and destroy their manufacturing ability and force them to buy your expensive manufactured goods. They would get the resources from these countries for cheap and sell them, expensive manufactured goods. And you can see this with the British Empire in India, where they destroyed the Indian textile industry, which was one of the most significant textile industries in the world at the time.
Yes.
And they destroyed that so that they could sell them clothes.
Yeah.
But they were really interested in Indian cotton.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that empire does.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Europe and the United States in particular really benefited from empire.
Yeah.
And they passed those benefits on to their workers.
Yeah.
To create a mass market and a consumer class.
Yeah.
Because that was important for the technology at the time. The idea of post-Fordism is that somewhere in the 60s, 70s, 80s, the technologies of production changed. That with CAD/CAM, that's computer-aided design, computer-aided manufacture, highly computerized manufacturing, and flexible manufacturing, where you have a programmable welding machine which can alter the assembly line, and it can produce, a certain number of cars, and then it can switch and just start turning out trucks, and then it can switch and turn out tanks, and it's flexible.
Yeah.
You don't have machines that can only do one thing.
Yeah.
So you don't need to have as big a mass market.
Yeah.
And at the same time, mass market was starting to be global.
Yeah.
So you don't need to have a privileged group in one country or in a few countries to be your mass market. All of a sudden you can have a global mass market of relatively well-off people, of elites. Yeah. And because the resource base for people, their means of production of producing food and things like that, had been amalgamated, and most people just don't have the resource to produce their own food anymore.
Yeah.
They don't have land.
Yeah.
So they are forced to work by necessity, and they are forced to buy food, and they are forced, they are a captive market for a lot of basic goods.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, the social relations of, you don't need to keep this privileged group, this middle class consumer group in the United States and so on. And the idea of postmodernism is that with the changes in the technologies of production, you again can change the social relations of production. And you no longer need this. The interests of the capitalist class are no longer aligned with the interests of the workers. And that's what's happening. And that's what has been happening.
Yeah.
Certainly since the 80s.
Yeah, right.
And a lot of that is based in the scientific technical revolution. And you have changes in management strategies as you get into globalism. Now, am I getting into lecture mode too much?
No, it's fine.
Okay. One of the basic strategies that corporations adopted, one of the interesting things, I read a book called The Rich and the Super Rich. Oh God, when was that? That was probably in 1970 something, where they were predicting some of this stuff.
Yeah.
And they were talking about if global capitalism happened, and they were talking about the advances in communication, and saying, one of the issues is that communication globally allows different parameters of production and that kind of stuff. And that one of the things they said, people talk about fast communication or instant communication, and they don't really get it because they're thinking of, a phone call or a radio, and they say that's not fast communication. Fast communication is a computer talking to a computer at the speed of a computer. Almost instantaneously. And you had some weird stuff.
This is in 1970, that book.
They were talking about that.
Oh, okay.
And that coming, because you had the main frames, but you also started to have the mid frames and the smaller things, and you were just starting to see PCs.
Yeah, because Yasha Levine, can I just interrupt for a second?
Yeah.
Yasha Levine, who wrote Surveillance Valley, about Silicon Valley and all of that, he was talking about how they developed the internet, the military, to be able to track Vietnamese during the war, Viet Cong during the war. That was part of it, and that's what they sort of started using it for. That was one of the main things. And so in his book, I haven't read his book yet, but in his book he talks about how it developed, for the military. The military.
Well, yes,
used
it was partly the military thing, but it was also.
Hang on a sec.
Research. I'll just keep talking. Yeah. It was also research. It was the universities talking to one another. I was in university at the time, and we were able to talk to people around the globe, and that was outside the military. It's one of those things that there are other ways, and you started to see, as you started to get PCs, groups like PeaceNet and EcoNet and that kind of thing. Once you started to get, it's really started with people in universities using billboards. And then you started to get people using dial-up modems and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
With very primitive computers.
Yeah.
But PC computers.
Yeah.
That was before the web, before they had really much graphic stuff.
Yeah.
You didn't have web pages or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But where was I? I was talking about the.
You were talking. I'm sorry, I've put you off the.
You took me
Sorry
in a different
about that.
direction.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Anyway, like you can see globally that essentially in the 80s,
Excuse me.
I think corporations basically realized they didn't need nations anymore.
Yeah.
And they still had the U.S. acting as its imperial tool to force nations to do investment and so on. I mean, that was part of empire, was the fact that, for example,
Somebody's talking to you, Didi.
there was a
grave.
Tale of how humans enslaved their own race for economic gain and sustainability. Yeah, absolutely. And there's no sustainability in it. It's just for economic gain, short-term gain, increasing gain. Oh, I was talking about corporate strategies.
Right.
And that's an important thing to look at. One of them is the hollow factory corporate policy, which is, as communications got that good, they realized it was ridiculous for a car company to make a whole lot of cars, have them sitting in some big lot, and then shipping them out to various places to sit in lots. And that's a lot of resources tied up that you're hoping to sell. And they, with hollow factory management strategy, the idea is that you could get an order, you'd have a ship bring in the resources, you'd be able to make your factory work, produce the resources, put it on a ship, exactly what you needed, and then the ship would leave, the same ship that brought in the material, virtually.
Right.
And you had nothing stored. There was no reserve of goods. It was all to be made when it was ordered, effectively, and shipped out immediately. And that way, you're saving all kinds of money. But part of that management strategy was to treat labor as another resource. And so you had a core of people paid a sustainability wage, who were your core workers. And then you had a lot of workers who would be hired when you had a job and you had a bunch of things to do. And when you were finished, they were let go. And that's where you start seeing a casualization of the workforce. And this is actually a management strategy, part of the hollow factory thing. And this is also part of just-in-time management strategy. These are little buzzwords that business managers use, which is to, this same idea of you can order things and get it to people just in time, so that nothing is stored, nothing needs to be held, and that kind of thing. It's all just and
like Amazon.
But any kind of factory kind of starts using that. And you start also with the 80s seeing the competition between, capitalism is always a competition. And they talk about competition being good for the consumers because people compete. But it's not. It's just a competition. And the thing with competitions is somebody wins.
That's right.
And when somebody wins,
and that was the purpose of that Monopoly game, to show how.
Yeah, it's Monopoly. I did a video on
about
Monopoly, but to show how
what it was meant to be about.
Yeah, what it was meant to be about, and also the way, like, the toy industry was monopolized, and then it took over kids' television, and then it took over, all of this kind of thing. It takes over movies, all these movies, which are really part of toy industry strategies,
big franchise
to sell stuff.
Exactly. In fact, the movie is really just a big ad for the merchandise, basically, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than...
And not just the Transformers, but, that's where you look at movies and they don't... who was it? Somebody was saying, really, the old-style movie is is almost dead unless you have, if movies don't get made unless it's going to be a franchise.
Yes.
That is integrated with production of all kinds of merch.
Yes.
And it's really becomes a vehicle for selling stuff.
Yes, really.
As well as a thing in itself.
Yeah.
I mean, the movies
which
are
probably
actually
explains
another
to
thing.
some extent why they keep rebooting things, because they've sort of realized, well, if we reboot this, then we can capture past audiences present and then sell a whole lot of merchandise for that, and it's like they don't have any imagination
and
anymore.
And that's why
we
don't see too many really original movies or standalone movies or anything like that.
Yeah, like I was just saying, I wonder what Mike Myers is doing, because he hasn't done a movie. It seems like he's been off the radar for a long time, and I had a look at IMDb, and there he is, Austin Powers #4 or something, and I was thinking, oh Christ.
And
don't
of course
these people,
he's been doing Shrek.
Yeah, don't these people have any sort of creativity that they have to keep sort of thrashing these things over and over again? Can't they come up with something else?
Yeah.
Anyway.
But part of what I was saying was that with the 80s, the opening up of global capitalism, you started seeing companies getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And one of the things they would do is take all of their resources and leverage it. They'd get mortgages effectively on everything they do and turn it into money that they can then invest in stuff, not necessarily productive things, but on the stock market where they can make the most money. And so you see companies, when you had the big collapse in '86 or whatever it was, the economic problem, that was the first big falling back in that boom and bust cycle, where people got so extended that when the loans started coming in and they couldn't cover it, they went broke. And it didn't matter whether the productive thing that they were doing, which was supposedly the core of the thing, was still producing and selling stuff, because it had been mortgaged and used for speculative investment. And speculative investment is huge relative to real investment. I remember seeing something about the total of all goods and services, real goods and services, was, this was years ago in the 80s, was something like, $2 trillion or something like that at the time. And the speculative economy was something like $120 trillion. So it's huge compared to anything real. But as that collapsed, then the biggest corporations could buy up the corporations and companies that went broke. And try and get to the point where they were big enough by the time the collapse reached them that they could cover their loans. And then the biggest companies could just clean up all of the companies that went broke. And companies started merging and buying one another until you see things like, there is really only one toy company anymore. There is really only one this and that.
Bezos will have his own empire.
With
his health insurance
monopoly
and all of that.
Nestle's went into some sort of a deal with a French banking investment bank, and they own virtually all of the milk products and that kind of stuff, ice cream and those kind of things.
I hope they completely go under when people
globally,
abandon
in
dairy.
In Europe and in Australia and I mean, almost any company, it looks like you've got a bunch of brands.
Yeah,
You know,
sure.
in fact, they're all the same.
Yeah, yeah.
They're
There is
brands that look like
Yeah, there is
it's
no
diversity,
competition.
but they're not.
It's just pretension, pretending diversity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Are people still there? Are people still there, or are we raving on?
I don't know. I hope people are still there. I
Yeah.
hope I haven't bored people shitless.
No, I don't think so. But depends what people are interested in, really. Hey.
Yeah. I'll go fly off to an ancient ruin instead.
Oh, okay. So grave is still there. There's 6 people there. 2 of them are us. So
Yeah.
there's a few people there.
Grave says, I'm here.
Yeah. So I just saw a little notification that Taiwan wants help against China's expansion. Seriously and truly, this is going to just be so tedious and awful watching this continual vilification of China. It just gets, you know what I mean? It's just going to get worse and worse.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that was very interesting, Dee Dee. It's always interesting hearing about the the development of the
Global development
SHIT
stuff
show.
is always interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
think
you
it's
know,
interesting.
Henry Ford, apparently Hitler had a picture of Henry Ford behind his desk, a big one.
Oh yeah, Ford was a big fan of Hitler, and
Yeah, and
Hitler
vice
was
versa.
a fan of Ford too.
But Hitler,
Yay.
what's the name, was a
Good
big
buddies.
anti-Semitic. He wrote this. I think he actually had this sort of a proclamation Ford. And it said, quote, "The international financiers are behind all war. They are what is called the international Jew, German Jews, French Jews, English Jews, American Jews. I believe in all these countries except our own, the Jewish financier is supreme. Here the Jew is a threat," end quote. That was something that Ford said about
Yeah, Ford was
Jews.
a Nazi,
He
basically.
was a Nazi, yeah. So anyway, and a lot of his apparently all his different volumes that he wrote, these anti-Semitic articles, apparently there was like 91 of them, where he's blaming the Jews for everything from the Bolshevik Revolution to the First World War, and apparently it was picked up by the Germans took notice of it, and they published one in the Hammer. It was translated and first published in the first, and it was called, the first volume was called The International Jew, and that was in the summer of 1921. So Henry Ford probably assisted in the spiraling anti-Semitic sort of thing in the Weimar Republic. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one of the things, like that people don't recognize is the degree to which Europe and the United States really were conducting a war against the Soviets in the 20s and so on. I mean, after they finished World War I, they basically had people, conducting a war against Russia. And I mean, that was just horrible.
Yeah.
Here, the Soviet Union was trying to get something together, but they were being crippled by capitalists everywhere because they saw it as a huge threat.
Yeah.
And the article you were talking about goes into the thing of the way a lot of the support for the Nazis was really support for their anti-communist
Sure.
programs.
Yeah, and I mentioned this before that,
And of course, it's
and
never
this is what
acknowledged
Chris-
that really it was the Russians who mainly stopped the Nazis.
And that was what that Chris Hedges on Contact thing about the fascism was, is sort of that this has been around for a long time in the US, and a long time before even the actual word was kind of being thrown about. And I haven't watched it properly, but the US, even up until 2014, refused to denounce Nazism at the UN. Like, that's something, I don't know why there wasn't a huge kerfuffle about that at the time. Like, I mean, what the F, you know what I mean? Didi?
Yeah.
Is that just, like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
what,
I mean,
what on earth?
What do you think when you've got a country who says, "Oh no, Nazis are fine"?
Yeah, that's just fine, and they haven't, and they refused.
This is the country that claims it's defending democracy all over the world,
and they refused to denounce that.
But they're just fine with Nazis.
Yeah, refused to denounce it.
They're not okay with socialists.
No, that's and they're not okay. Yeah, I mean, seriously and truly, like, it's so messed up, and it's such a joke because it's so hypocritical, it's inconsistent, and yet we, because the Fourth Estate is just stenographers, no one ever kind of, makes a fuss. You would think that everybody would have made a fuss about that. What on earth?
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, just,
You would think.
I get tired of being sort of shocked about. No, I'm not even shocked really. It's just disgusted. It's just one thing after another.
Yeah, it is.
Isn't it?
It is.
It's just sort of like, yeah.
They consider essentially people getting together to work against exploitation to be a threat, and it is.
Yeah. Yes.
It is a threat.
Yes.
And
that is the
and
biggest threat.
And that's wonderful. Yeah, that is their real threat.
Yeah.
That
the
people might work together
and the
against
biggest
exploitation.
Threat, the biggest threat too is any people's movement.
Yes.
And that's why the US empire is going around crushing any people's movement anywhere in the world, like Bolivia, Venezuela, that kind of thing. Yeah. Anywhere where people are organizing, including in their own country, and that's what they've done particularly recently, twice with Bernie Sanders. I mean, they've been doing it all along throughout the centuries and stuff, but this is like the twice now, the people's movement, and people saying what they want.
Well,
and they crushed it, and not only that, Didi, but just this cabinet that Biden has, and Sanders let them, of course, and Biden is just, brought in some people that are actually, like, it's just spitting in the faces of any sort of people's movement that Bernie Sanders had managed to coalesce around him by putting in people like Neera Tanden, who was, vehemently anti-Sanders, and other things, against Social Security and all this kind of stuff. That kind of person.
Yeah.
And that's what he's doing. And I don't know why Bernie Sanders made this idea, I've made some deals, that we'll have some say, we've formed some committees and Biden will... BS. I don't know if he must be an idiot if he thought that Biden was going to do anything remotely for the people. Seriously.
I have real mixed feelings about Sanders. I mean, I think on the one hand, people say, well, he's radicalized a lot of people, and that may be true.
I think that's true.
But
he's changed the dialogue.
On the other hand, I think he's been a real Judas goat.
Yeah, he's kept them in the Democratic Party.
Into the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
And he's never going to go against them. He just bows to their will. He's best friends with Biden.
Hands up who thinks he might run again.
I mean, what happened to
seriously, Didi? Hands up who thinks he might run again in 2024. Seriously, I wouldn't be surprised if he ran again in 2024 and people followed him again into the slaughterhouse. Yeah. Seriously. I would not be surprised if that happened again. I mean, that whole shame me once.
Hi, Jenny.
Like it's my fault. Then the second time, it's the second time it happens. It's shame on me. Well, yeah. I mean, honestly, I can see it happening again. I can.
Yeah.
This is how. I'm sorry to say this, but this is how stupid people are.
Yeah.
They should have dumped him the first time round. They should have dumped him the first time round because people were begging him to stand up against the sabotage and the literally fraud that the Democratic Party was doing upon him,
and
right?
Actually,
and he did not
work against the powers that be.
And I kept saying in my videos up until he dropped out of the race that it was gonna happen again, which everybody could see. Because if it happens once, it's going to happen again. If he lets it happen the first time, why isn't he going to let it happen the second time? Because he needs to be in the good graces of that awful party. So it happened again. Did he call them out? No, he didn't. In fact, he was groveling and carrying on, and then got everybody to come with him to support Biden. You know, like.
Yeah.
And I bet you it's gonna happen again. I can see him running again, seriously, and everybody will get behind him again, and he'll have these big, maybe they won't, but he'll have these big sort of campaign rallies. People will be screaming, carrying on, thinking he's going to do it this time. He's going to do it this time, and the same thing will happen. There'll be some other competent fascist better than Trump, because the Democratic Party in these next 4 years is not only not going to do anything for the people, but they're going to actually probably do, with a smile on their face, what Trump was going to do anyway, right?
Yeah.
And then it comes 2024, there'll be a competent fascist like Eric Prince or Tom Cotton or somebody like that, or someone we're not even aware of right now, who'll be eloquent and stuff. And more people will vote for that person, because the Democratic Party, once again, as would be predicted, because they're corporate owned, will do what is expected, and that is nothing except for corporations. They'll do plenty for corporations, and it looks like they're going to do as much as they can to like hit Venezuela, probably invade Venezuela, could even invade Iran, continue the warmongering against Russia and China. You know, all the things that he's got, the biggest warmongers, the permanent war people like Michelle Flournoy, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, this is what we're going to, we're basically, this is a run up to a competent fascist for 2024.
Yeah.
I mean, this is where we are. We're on the precipice of extinction as a species, and this is the nonsense that we're doing right now. I mean, you couldn't make this up. Like, sometimes I have to pinch myself and say, yep, this is really happening. This isn't some sort of nightmare. This is really happening. We're on the precipice of extinction, where there are things going so awry now in the environment, I don't even want to know how bad it is now. I can't even bear to look at it. This is how bad it is.
Yeah.
Right, Didi? With all the feedback loops and all that kind of thing happening right now.
Yes.
And here we are fussing about, they've sort of I mean, you can see this SHIT show happening with Biden and all this kind of stuff, and then you see all this frivolous fluff that's on Twitter and all this kind of thing, and I think, oh my God, we are too stupid to live. I know I say this on occasion, but seriously, as a species, we are too stupid to live.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And we're it's like we're children in the back of a car with two drunken, crazy parents who are just driving all over the road, and we're coming to the cliff, and there's almost nothing we can do. Almost. Well, there is things we could do, but we can't seem to organize ourselves out of a paper bag.
No.
That's really, really what it is.
Yeah.
And it's not surprising we can't organize ourselves, because neoliberalism and all of that, and people
doesn't want us to work.
No, so
work
it's
together.
destroyed community. It's destroyed people's ability to focus on even what's happening, because they're too busy with their 3 effing jobs to be able to pay attention to politically what's happening.
If people work together, that's a threat, because when people work together, they might work against the exploitation.
Yes. So they bring up some awful sort of. They'll pick on like the Christian fascists will try and bring up another sort of a group to vilify. If it's not women and the anti-choice stuff, then of course now it's trans people. Let's make out like gender diversity is the most horrific and evil thing that's ever happened. Forget about the permanent war. That's fine. Killing people by the millions is okay, but somehow expressing gender in different ways is apparently the most evil thing that could happen. So that's become now the something to rally behind. Which unfortunately ignoramuses are sort of following behind it from the left even. Anyway, so but this is I mean, this is where we're at. We're on the edge of extinction, and we're beside ourselves about people expressing themselves in different ways, in diverse ways, rather than maybe that we're on the edge of extinction and that this endless war is appalling and disgusting.
Well,
and capitalism, end-stage capitalism, is ecocide. Oh no, let's worry about, whether Harry Styles is wearing a dress. For F's sake, you know what I mean? It's insane.
well, I mean, they've always pushed for otherization.
Somebody's talking to us, Dee Dee.
And diversity.
Grave says, I believe aliens
Holly,
exist.
hi, Holly. Holly's in.
Oh, hi, Holly.
And Ginny's
sorry, we're just
still
raving
here,
again,
very
Holly.
Interested.
No, just read out what Grave said.
Grave says,
there.
I believe aliens exist.
And
I don't know. I
believe aliens
exist, but I don't think they're around.
No, why would they bother with this? No, but read out the whole thing, Dee Dee, because it doesn't play back.
And they are aware of us, but won't interfere until the planet is under one government, as so we will be able to be steered without causing an unfair war against each other. I don't think that. I think they would just think that we're probably incredibly dangerous.
Yeah,
as a species.
Any intelligent species that's from some other planet probably wouldn't want to, announce themselves in any way, because who would want to? Because look at the way we treat not only our own species, humans, but non-human animals. Look at what we're doing to non-human animals, enslaving, torturing and killing for trivial reasons of mostly palate pleasure. I mean, any alien from another planet, if they saw that sort of thing, the enslavement of most of the planet, which is 99.99% of the species on the planet, and the way we're treating them, they would probably think, no thank you, let's move on.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
I mean, think so.
We seriously need, if we were a vegan planet and just didn't do that, maybe we wouldn't be doing these other things too, which is torturing and killing our own species. Anyway, it's all nuts, and I would imagine any alien that had the technology to get here wouldn't want any part of it.
Yeah.
Unless they were altruistic and they could somehow maybe try and turn it around in some way.
I think if they were altruistic, they would have done something positive.
Well, they might be trying in some ways. Who knows? If they're able to transform into some kind of, I don't know, if they're able to disguise themselves as a human, who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Yes, maybe Jesus was an alien.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe all the ones that we killed were aliens trying to do the right thing, and excuse me, Who knows?
Who knows?
How are you, Holly? Anyhow, Dee Dee's been talking about post-Fordism, and
yeah.
And some, what else we were talking about?
Oh, management things, just-in-time management strategies, and why the workforce has become so casualized, and all that kind of stuff. A bit of neo-Marxist analysis.
Yeah, like talk about that friend of yours who they keep firing just before Christmas.
Oh.
Yeah, this is an example of, this is the gig economy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is actually, it's a regular, I mean, this is the government.
Yeah.
This is what makes it so really disgusting. I have a friend who was working for the Australian Electoral Commission, which is an interesting thing, and she was told that she was one of the main things kind of keeping that electoral office together. And they would hire her on a casual basis, and at the end of roughly 6 months, they would fire her, and then they would rehire her, because if you were employed for longer than 6 months, according to government regulations, which were meant to protect workers, you had to be hired as full-time, or as at least part-time, fractional full-time, if you were only working part-time. But and that gave you certain benefits. It gave you, holiday pay and a whole bunch of other things. And she was told that there was a government rule. This was under, what government was it under? I think it was under the Hawke government, actually, the Keating government.
That's a Labour government in Australia.
Labour government. She was told that was, it may have still have been Fraser, I'm not sure, but that they didn't want anybody becoming a new government employee, because then they have to justify if they ever want to let them go. You have certain rights as a government employee. And so they said, we don't want any more. And so they would sack her. And it's like, one of the more disgusting things is they would sack her just before Christmas.
Yeah. So
that they could avoid all of the holiday pay and that kind of stuff. And so they didn't have to pay her for any kind of holidays. And that meant, of course, she was a single mother, and that meant that she was stuck not having any money.
Yeah, that's disgusting.
And yeah, it's disgusting.
Yeah, and that, I think, that's the thing, isn't it? You keep people casual. You don't have to pay them any, of the usual things that any permanent sort of worker.
Yeah. You don't have to do anything for them, basically.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. Hallelujah. Let's, really screw them.
And you know that book I mentioned, Surveillance Valley, The Secret Military History of the Internet by Yasha Levine. I'll just read a little description of it. A reporter unearths the true history of the Internet. It was built by the government to spy on citizens at home and abroad. In Surveillance Valley, Yasha Levine traces the history of the Internet back to its beginnings as a Vietnam-era tool for spying on guerrilla fighters and anti-war protesters, a military computer networking project that ultimately envisioned the creation of a global system of surveillance and prediction. Levine shows how the same military objectives that drove the development of early Internet technology are still at the heart of Silicon Valley today. Spies, counterinsurgency campaigns, hippie entrepreneurs, privacy apps funded by the CIA. From the 1960s to 2010, the revelatory and sweeping story will make you reconsider what you know about the most powerful, ubiquitous tool ever created. So that's the Surveillance Valley, and I would like to read that. I have not read it, but I thought people might find that interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be very interesting.
Yeah. He's such an interesting writer, and if you missed my video a few hours ago, it was about evictions and also a little about Yasha Levine's. They're trying to evict he and his partner, who's pregnant, and that's sort of really great. But just evictions in general, how kind of outrageous it's looking on a map and different states. It's looking really bad, isn't it, Dee Dee?
Yeah. It looks disgusting.
In many states, 41% of people are on the verge in the next 2 months of eviction, isn't it, Dee Dee? Something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
There's a whole bunch of states.
An outrageous number of people.
Yeah, so I've posted the video has the picture of the map in there, the image of the map, and it shows how many states are in a real mess. And I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, does anybody know if there's any talk of preventing, somehow with some sort of fiscal stimulus package, preventing these evictions? Because this is going to be diabolical for COVID. Just that alone.
There's going to be, especially in winter, to be at the coldest time of the year, to be throwing people out of their homes at a time when there's probably not going to be a lot of other jobs.
No.
It's just, when you're homeless, it's so hard to do anything, really.
I mean, what is going to happen? Like, if those people actually get evicted, that this is going to be, we're talking tens of millions of people.
Yeah.
What is going to happen, Dee Dee? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? Is there, I just don't know what's going to happen. That's insane, isn't it?
It is. It's a huge number of people, and I have no idea what's going to happen for them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's awful.
Well, if this happens, I hope people kind of go berserk and really, really riot. Honestly, truly, really, really riot and just turn I'm sorry, I'm for non-violence and everything, but at that point, what have you got? You have nothing to, you've got nothing to lose. So if they don't get it together, if this stupid effing duopoly doesn't get it together and give some sort of social support to these people, then those people, they've made those people so desperate that there's I hope that they just really go to town and turn things upside down, because that's what this effing government deserves. Seriously.
Yeah.
When people have nothing to live for anymore, like when they've got nothing to lose, that's the sort of that's the sort of shit that happens.
Yeah.
Have I already swore? I'm trying not to swear. But anyway.
Yes.
And one of the, and I can see that in, this is the thing, our government here, they would love to do shit like that.
Yeah, Holly's saying no stimulus talk. How much can
people take?
Indeed.
Exactly. How much can they take? And seriously, this is the thing. How much can they take? That's what I want to know. When is it where you just go, F this.
That's enough.
F this, and start turning things upside down.
Well, the thing is, when you're out on the street and you have no resources, it becomes harder in some ways also to protest. But that's when things start really turning violent.
Yes.
I mean, that's basically what happened with the French Revolution.
And if this government, if Joe Biden's administration doesn't do anything for these people, it'll be interesting to see how they respond, how fascistic they can really get, which I can imagine will be just as fascistic as Donald Trump. Because look at the shit show of a cabinet he's put in there.
Yeah. He's got all of the warmongers.
The warmongers and the people that don't give a shit about the people.
He's absolutely,
and you wouldn't expect anything different.
Very anti-China.
Yeah, but look at the people that he's put in that are really they don't give a shit about people, and they're actually sort of I wouldn't be surprised if he even tries to rip out some social supports he's always wanted to get rid of Social Security.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if, why not? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I don't know, it'll be interesting because you can't then, I wonder if the people that were crying out about Trump being fascistic, I wonder if they'll actually pay any attention or say anything about Joe Biden being that way.
Yeah. I hope so. I think there's a lot of muttering about Biden already. I hope that it's widespread and it's not just, kind of the left on the internet.
Yeah.
That there's more of a general awareness of
I just
how
wonder,
bad
if they're going to do things like, Dee Dee?
Yeah.
Just sort of do things in a, instead of just giving somebody a big bucket of poison to swallow, they'll gradually tip it in people's ears and kill them that way. Do you know what I mean? I sort of think, I wonder if it's going to be not really overt sort of, you know what I mean? Not really overt stuff that he does, but sort of line it up so eventually, like they're trying to do here, death by 1,000 cuts with Medicare.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Holly was saying, they will censor any criticism of Biden, but I hope not. And Jenny said, yes, I too have been thinking there will need to be a mass uprising. Yeah, really.
Yeah, I really think there needs to be.
Anyway.
I think one of the things is that with so many people going to be made homeless, the poverty draft thing is going to work against them, because that means that there's a lot of poor people whose families are going to be evicted.
Oh, yes.
And or a lot of soldiers whose families are going to be evicted.
Right.
And I think they're not going to be happy about that.
Right. But how's that going to affect the poverty draft?
Well, the poverty draft affects that. It means that those soldiers' families are likely to be the people who are being evicted.
Yeah.
So if they try to call in the soldiers against any kind of mass uprising, then the soldiers may not be so sympathetic with the government.
Yeah, that's true.
And so willing to actually fight their own family and so on.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that that's the case.
Yeah. Well, it's really always the case, isn't it, that when systems, when the state goes too far, eventually it's at some point the army rebels against like orders to fire upon or whatever the population, and then the whole thing comes to a crashing halt.
Yeah.
And I mean, the sad thing is that there has been firing. I mean, they use the police as the firing on the on the population. It's not really the army, and the police is not going to back away. There, it's a system in itself. It's an occupational force basically in the United States.
Yeah.
The police.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, are they going to? They don't seem to have any problem firing on
their own families.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
I think the thing is, if the demonstrations or riots or whatever are widespread enough, that it will be their own families.
Sure, yeah.
Because I don't know how.
Yeah, because it will be. I mean, I
don't know how uncaring those police are when it comes to their own families.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those police, they're right wingers, and they have a lot of white supremacist friends and family and stuff. And I'm sure, and they will be affected by it, of course, too. I mean, it won't discriminate. It won't discriminate between left and right and stuff. So, yeah, we'll have to see. Meanwhile, the planet is turning into a potato crisp, and things are going awry.
Yes.
Really badly. But anyway, let's not let that. Yeah.
Let's see. Have I been everywhere here? Oh, there's a couple of planets I haven't been on.
So let's see, there's 1, 2, 3. I think there's about 4 people in there's a few people maybe doing a bit of lurking.
What's that?
I think there might be a few people lurking. Feel free to come in and say hi and stuff. And
yeah, one of the worst things is the way they're targeting China. And one of the things I've thought about China is that China is really one of the most successful experiments in terms of socialism. I think one of the things that people forget is that socialism is something which is relatively new. Yeah. the Soviet Union was socialist, um, and right from the beginning, the Europe and the U.S. sent in troops to try and overthrow them.
Yeah.
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 They
And
were
they were
actually
fine with
fighting for the first 15 years of their existence. They were fighting foreign troops. I mean, Jesus, God in heaven.
They were fine with the Nazis. They were fine with the Nazis having a problem with
the Russians.
Yeah. Until they
You
started.
mean the West was fine with the Nazis having?
Yes,
the capitalists.
exactly.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They were fine. They were fine
until it became a problem for them, and
Yeah.
then they weren't fine about it. But they were fine because any excuse.
Because they didn't want any kind of socialism. They were hoping that the Nazis would, be fighting communism.
Yeah.
And they were. That's one of the reasons they thought the Nazis were good guys.
Yeah. But then when it started becoming a problem for them.
Yeah. Oh.
For the West, and then it was Then they decided to get involved.
Yeah.
But still try to claim that they were the U.S. still tries to claim that they saved everything in World War II when it was really the Russians.
Yeah, it was mainly the Russians.
And they lost like 27 million people, didn't they, the Russians?
Yeah. And I mean, you have other, experiments in socialism, like like Cuba and a lot of the Latin American countries, and it's not quite the same socialism, and Cuba's been a